One summer, during college, I decided that working on a sheep farm in Vermont made perfect sense. Nothing in my suburban life had pointed me in this direction, and I confess I wasn't really a huge fan of animals, but I was determined. I wanted to get strong doing manual labor. And so, with the unbridled energy of the young and the foolish, I learned to hook 45-pound bales of hay and stack them in a loft. I learned about intensive grazing, which means moving fences and sheep in intricate patterns across the fields. I grew to love fresh eggs enough that I was willing to suffer the ammonia-rich stench of the chicken coop. I didn't shear the sheep, but I stood in the stifling July heat of the barn, scooping up freshly shorn wool as it fell from each ewe. I fed animals and I buried animals, and every day I got strong. At night, I walked the 100 yards away from the family's yellow farmhouse to my own tiny cottage. Inside, it was spare. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, and near the bed where I slept sat a radio, connecting me to the world. Those first 2 weeks, I fell asleep instantly. By the third week, however, I started listening to music, letting Vermont Public Radio's classical station help me drift off. Then one night, an announcer interrupted the program. "This is a warning," the deep voice said. "2 convicts have escaped from a North Carolina prison and are believed to be heading north through this region. They are armed and considered extremely dangerous." I sat up, I looked around, and then I tiptoed over to where the front door was supposed to be, but wasn't. In its place hung a screen door with a hook and eye latch. Lifting the hook, I slipped it into the little round eye, trying to secure myself from the 2 armed and extremely dangerous convicts. Then I got back into bed, pulled up the covers, and waited to be murdered. In the morning, when I woke up alive, I walked to the yellow farmhouse and called home. "Mom," I said, my back to the farm family, "could you please send me my Raggedy Ann?" I like to think there wasn't a quiver in my voice or shame in my throat, but in truth, there were both. During the week it took for my doll to arrive, NPR failed to report on the whereabouts of the convicts. Each night, clutching only fear and fatigue, I willed my eyes shut. Spoiler alert, I did not die. Since I lived, I learned a few things. I learned that I was strong enough to work on a farm. I also learned it takes strength to acknowledge that danger exists beyond my control. There will always be escaped convicts lurking just beyond the screen door. That I believed a latch hook or a Raggedy Ann could keep me safe was both foolhardy and necessary. It's instinctual to seek protection, but naive to believe in invulnerability. Faith, even in a rag doll, has its place in the world. All these years later, I live in the threshold of screen doors. The untamed winds from outside pass in, and the filtered air from inside escapes out. The boundaries blur, which is the point of the screen, while the framework remains in place, which is the point of the door. It's the closest thing I have to understanding the need for control and the recognition that the longer I live, the less of it I have.